Oh, Merry Christmas, you bunch of filthy animals. I hope you're having a great day wherever in the world you are, whether you celebrate Christmas or not, or whatever holiday celebration you are having. I hope that it is a good one. Now, before the end of the year, a few weeks ago, I sent a community poll asking people if they would like to see the state of the collection before or after Christmas. And you guys voted on it, so we're going to do it just before Christmas. Christmas Eve, to be exact. Hello everyone, welcome back to the VW channel. I hope that you are all safe and well, and as I mentioned before, enjoying your festive season. Now, before I get into the review, well not the review, the roundup today of the state of the collection, I just want to ask everyone on this channel to like, share and subscribe, not just to my channel, but to anyone who is doing a state of the collection this year. I didn't quite realise when I first started doing it just how long it takes. And my collection isn't particularly big. I'd say it's middle of the road. It's not massive, but some people like Just One More Watch, for example, who has, I think he had 72 watches this year, and other people who have got a huge amount of watches in their collection, they really need to be shown some love, because the amount of time it takes to record everything and then do the voiceovers for it, it is a huge amount of work. And when you think that the average video on YouTube, especially for a watch review, is between 8 and 12 minutes, if you're making something like this and it's going to take you 44 minutes to an hour to record, you can sort of understand just how much time goes into the recording, to the voiceovers, to the editing process, and if there's anything wrong with any of the images, having to reshoot it again. So if you do see any more states of the collections from anyone else on YouTube, I really implore you just to give the video a like, and you know, if you like this content, to subscribe as well, because the amount of effort it is unreal. Anyway, let me get into my state of the collection on this VW festive special. So all in, I have my watches in 2.5 watch boxes, if that's about right. So I've got one watch box which is filled with some of my vintage pieces and some of the more budget style items. I have another watch box which is filled with some AliExpress items, and then I've got another box as well, so actually 3 altogether, which is filled with some of the more premium watches within my collection. And then I've also got what I call like a take-home bag as well. So I have an office which is slightly separate to my house, although it's still in the same sort of grounds, but I have 4 watches that I always take home with me every evening, in addition to anything else that I'm wearing, just because I like to keep a hold of those ones that are very special to me. So altogether, these watches make up my collection. So originally it would have been 35 watches, I think, in total, but what I've done is I've slimmed them down a little bit. I've sold some of them off, the ones that I know that I'm just not going to wear at all, and I think I'll be slimming some more down during the New Year period as well. But at the moment, as it currently stands, my collection stands at around 25 watches in total. So let me crack on with the first one. And by the way, I haven't done this in any particular order. I can probably say that I've put it in the order in which it's in the watch box. So as you can go up, you can see, not in terms of price, how different they are, although I think there is a line between them. It's how often I wear them, and also how often they come out of the box for me to do, you know, some general sort of sort of maintenance on it, and cleaning, DIY, all that kind of stuff as well. But anyway, all that aside, let me move on to the first watch. So the first watch on this list today actually comes from my wife, and there are quite a few of them that are gifts from my wife. My wife likes to buy vintage watches, and she's bought me this vintage watch, which is another Smiths. It's not the Smiths watch which I featured in a review. This is another Smiths watch. Now this is a Smiths Astrolon. It's a Swiss-made watch. It is quite unique because it has a television-style case, acrylic crystal over the top, but it's also, the movement is actually plastic. And I was quite skeptical as to whether this would work or not, and how well this would work. But this watch actually does keep pretty good time. It seems to be in pretty good condition. As you can see, there is a slight sort of gold paint on the case itself. It's stainless steel with some gold IP painting, which has faded over the years. And I don't think it looks too bad. The only thing I've really done with this watch since purchasing it, or since having it gifted to me, sorry, is I've changed the leather strap. It's 22mm leather strap, and I've changed it over to one of my own, which is sort of quick release, which I think makes this watch looks pretty good. On the dial itself, you've got a really nice looking minute track. You've got Smiths, and then you've got the Astrolon. Underneath, you've just got Swiss in big capitals. And you've got a date window at the 3 o'clock as well. And you've got the 12, 6 and 9 sort of marked out too. Very simple dial, very well done. There's a recessed sort of crown in it. I think it's a pretty nice looking watch, and that's a good one to start off with, I think. Next up on the list is the Casio A158 series. Now this watch was given to me as a Christmas present, I think maybe 5 years ago, something like that, from my in-laws. I've kept it ever since, and this is what sort of reignited my interest and love for watches. I always liked watches as a kid, but I sort of didn't really grow out of it, but you know, sort of focused on other things. And then this watch sort of came in and really sort of transformed my thoughts on watches, and re-engaged my love for the hobby and for horology in general. So I really enjoy this watch. I don't wear it that often, but I still keep it in my case, and it's something that, you know, is really important to me because of the fact that it was a gift, and also because it reignited my love for watches. The next watch on this list is a watch that really does deserve better from me. It is the Casio AE1200WH, which is the world timer, also known as the Casio Royale. Now, I bought this watch, and as you can see, it has been barely worn. I bought this watch about two and a half years ago. It was one of my first reviews on this channel, and I just have to say that I've just not worn it that much. And it's not that I don't like it at all. I just have other watches which are more my style that I tend to watch a little bit more. I tend to wear a little bit more as well, so that's probably why. But what I think I'm going to do with this one in the new year is potentially put this into a giveaway, because it is practically box new, and I just haven't spent that much time with it. These watches, if you've ever had a Casio Royale or ever looked at them before, they are rugged, they are reliable, they're robust, but they're also a unique design as well, and they're based on a Seiko that Roger Moore wore in the film Octopussy, which is why it's called a Casio Royale. So tenuous connections to the Bond franchise as well. But yeah, so this is the Casio World Time, or the Casio Royale, which is just, you know, it's a lovely watch, and I just don't wear it that much. Next watch is another Casio on this list, and this is almost like a very, very cheap G-Shock with the way that it is constructed. Sorry, I'm getting all mixed up today. It is the Casio W735H. This watch is, well, it feels like a G-Shock when you've got it in hand. It's got 100 meters of water resistance, a really good backlight, world timer, all the good stuff that you would expect from Casio, and I think it looks pretty good as well. I know that it may not be everyone's cup of tea when you're looking at G-Shocks, but for me, I quite like it. I think this one's a pretty good one. I won't go into too much detail with this one because you can expect a review of this watch coming to you in the new year. Now, from a Casio with a tenuous connection to the Bond franchise in the Casio Royale, to a watch that actually does have verified spy film credentials. It is the Casio Mission Impossible watch, which is also known as the DW290. And again, this one almost feels like a mini G-Shock. You've got the backlight, you've got stopwatch functions, you've got all of the other good stuff that come along with it. I quite like the design of this watch. Yes, it looks quite flat and quite oddly shaped, but I do like it. I know some people think this watch is an ugly duckling of the Casio range, but I still like it. I think this watch is a bit futuristic as well in a way. It's very 90s. The Mission Impossible franchise came out in the 90s. I'm a child of the 90s, and so for me this watch is a definite keeper within my collection. And when I bought this watch cost me just under £30 to buy, or $35 US. I think you can still get it for around that price, although they are harder to come by, so you may start to see them becoming a little bit more expensive. But if you do see one of these watches for under the $40 mark, let's say, it's definitely worth you picking up. It's got a great backlight, it's got the 90s sort of style and look to it, and this watch has 200 meters of water resistance, which trumps the other two Casios that I have within, well, the other three Casios that I've got within the collection of digital watches. Obviously there's still one more digital watch to go with the Casios in my collection, but this one is definitely one of my favorites, and I have worn this one quite frequently during 2022. Now we'll be going back to Casio in just a moment, but now we're going to hop over to Timex and we're going to have a look at the Timex Expedition. I really like this watch. I bought this watch because I was quite impressed by the specs of it. Yes, you've got mineral crystal and it's a quartz movement, but I thought it was a really nice looking chronograph. It's from the Expedition range, and this one has 100 meters of water resistance. I went for the black PVD style case, which is I think 44 millimeters instead of the 42 millimeter gunmetal one, just because I liked the minute track and I liked the, you know, how technical this watch looks on wrist. I have worn this watch quite a bit since actually wearing it, and I've swapped the bands over as well. It came on a suede leather strap, and I've actually swapped it over to this quick release green canvas style strap, which looks more military as well. You've got usual chrono timers on this watch. You've got a date complication at the 4 o'clock as well, which is color matched to the actual dial as well, which is all black and with the orange sort of patina style markings. And the main sort of standout with any Timex watch is the Indiglo function as well, and this Indiglo function is fantastic. I often find myself messing around with it as well. I've actually worn this watch when I've been exercising just as much as I have with my GShock, which I'll show you later on. But this watch is really impressive, and I think I bought this watch for around 60 pounds, so maybe around 65, 66 US dollars. But this watch really does offer incredible value for money, and it's got a lot of specs put into it. Timex, as we all know, are fantastic when it comes to giving you some of the best bang for your buck. You've just got to look around and you'll find a really good price for the Timex Expedition. So this really is one of my top choices and one of my top buys really for 2022. And from a great budget chronograph to a great budget Garda watch, so go anywhere, do anything, stainless steel sports watch with 100 meters of water resistance, it is the Casio MTP. And I thought that this watch was actually much better in terms of looks and in terms of fit and feel than the Casio Edifice, which costs almost double, and I still stand by that to this day. This watch has great accents on itself. It is a gilt style dial. You've got Roman numerals on the evens, and on the odds you've got batons. You've got a date complication at the 3 o'clock, which actually doesn't look out of place despite it not being quite so color matched. The indices hit every the marker as well, so the second hand hits every single marker. The bracelet isn't great, it is hollow links, but it is quite comfortable on wrist, and that is a plus point. And I do like the fact that even though it is just a single link bracelet, it looks for all intents and purposes like it's appearing to be a 5-link bracelet. It's a really good little watch from Casio, and I really do rate it. And as I said before, I still think this is actually better than the Casio Edifice. Now, moving on from more of the modern pieces back to another vintage piece, which is a Bulova. This is another automatic watch that my wife has bought for me. This is a relatively small watch. I haven't done a review for this one yet, and I'm planning to do it in the new year. It is a automatic Bulova. It has a square sort of case again. It is a touch smaller than the Smith's watch, which I featured earlier, but it seems to be in good working order. There's not much more I can say about this watch. Again, it's a nice bit of dome domed acrylic crystal on this watch. I need to get some poly watch on it actually as well to see if I can get rid of some of these scratches. But my wife has a bit of an eye for picking out some of these really good condition and good looking vintage watches. So when she does see them, she's the sort of person who will jump on it straight away and will buy something like this for me. She's got a much better eye for vintage than I do. But yeah, so I expect a review for this watch coming in 2023. The next watch is another gift from my wife. This one isn't a vintage watch, but it is a vintage reissue. It is the Timex Marlin, and my god, this watch is absolutely stunning. Yes, it is basic. It's got the acrylic crystal over the front of it. It stays true to the old designs as well, but I think this watch is really classy and really sweet. One of the reasons why I've just not been able to wear this watch as much is because I just haven't been wearing shirt and ties as much, and this watch really demands more formal dress, I think, in order to wear this one properly. Hopefully in 2023 there'll be more meetings and more business style trips that I can go on, and when I'm going on these trips, especially if I'm going to London or somewhere else, I'll want to wear a nice watch, but not one that I'm worried about getting stolen. This watch is absolutely one that fits the bill. I love this piece of a domed acrylic crystal. I know I've said it once and I'll say it again, but this watch was a really great gift and I do love it. It is one of my favourite dress watches, in fact probably my favourite dress watch bar one that I have currently in my collection. The next watch on this list is a vintage watch, another vintage watch that I've actually bought, and this isn't a gift or anything that was gifted to me. It's a watch that I saw online and decided to bid for. I know that it was broken, I know that it needed a bit of work, and I haven't done that work to the watch yet, but the main reason for me buying it was just the look of it. I mean, yes, it's a bit goldy and it looks a little bit sort of flashy, but the reason for me getting it is because it sort of reminds me of the watch that the Rolex Cellini watch that Christopher Lee wears in, I think it's The Man with the Golden Gun, I think, where he's sort of wearing a watch similar to this one, that's sort of all gold. But I really like the look of this watch and I really want to get it restored, so I think in the new year I'll be taking this one to a watchmaker. It doesn't have any acrylic crystal or glass over the front of the watch, so that needs putting on there, and then it just needs a little service on the battery as well. It's a quartz movement, so it shouldn't be too difficult, but this is from the 70s. It is a really nice looking watch, and yeah, for me it's just something that's a little bit different and something a little bit unique that I can keep, and I can keep into my collection. So the next watch within my collection is another vintage watch. This is a Timex that I picked up as actually part of a job lot, and I've got a video coming out soon on the job lot that I bought, because this isn't the only watch that I've picked up within this job lot, but there are a few watches that are, let's say, in pretty bad condition, but I thought I'd give it a go because I wanted to see what you could get in a job lot. This was the only watch, or one of the only watches, that was working immediately as soon as I'd opened the box. This is a manual wind Timex. This looks to be like it's from the 70s maybe, or maybe the 60s. It's hand wind. I've put it on the old Boltony strap from the Dirty Dozen watch that I sold, and it fits it really well. It looks quite nice. It needs a little bit of work though. I think the crystal needs some good poly watch on there to try and get a lot of the scratches out, but otherwise this watch is pretty interesting and I thought I'd keep it. You know, the whole job lot didn't cost me that much. I think it cost me £20 in all, and if this is the only watch out of the job lot that still works and works properly, I still think that I've paid a pretty good price for this Timex. On this list is a watch that I bought a few months ago, but I actually haven't got round to doing a review for it yet, and it's partly because I don't want to get on the hype train straight away, and also because I still have a few choice words and a few choice remarks that I want to make about this watch, and I want to make sure that my thoughts are filtered in a way, because I want to give someone my unfiltered opinion, but I also want to watch some of the language that I use for this watch. It is the Omega Swatch Moon Swatch. that I've bought. I bought the Mission to Pluto. I actually wanted to get the Saturn one because I'm a big fan of the Saturn ring, the Saturn rings on the dial. But the Pluto one is unique, and I wanted to buy it. But yeah, this watch is what it is. Really, it is a Swatch watch. It isn't the best in terms of quality. Let's be honest. It is a bioceramic, or basically sort of plastic, with I believe, an acrylic domed crystal over the top of it. It's not terrible. It's just not great, I don't think. And for the price that you can get them for online at the moment, which are around the £300 to £400 mark, there is a watch that you can buy with absolutely stellar Lunar credentials and with a really good and interesting story and fantastic movement and quality that you can buy for around that price easily all day long. And that watch is actually coming up later on in this state of the collection. But the Omega Moon Swatch is an interesting collaboration. I think it's a great piece of marketing, and I think it's a great sort of feather in the cap for Swatch and for the Swatch group in general, but I just think that it's potentially a little overpriced, and you're just sort of paying the extra for the Omega logo on the watch as well. Now, from the more value items and the more vintage value items, we're now going to jump across to the AliExpress buys that I've bought this year. And I've bought quite a few AliExpress watches in total, I think about 10 in total. However, 4 are the ones that have stayed in my collection. Now, the first within that collection is actually going to be the Mercure or the Perry Pollen watch from Mercure. This watch was actually sent to me for free by the Mercure group to review, but I like this watch so much that I've actually kept a hold of it, and I think it's a nice, unique design. I think Mercure are one of the better of the AliExpress brands out there. They're trying to do something a little different, which I appreciate. The only other brand really that I see that's doing a little extra, and I appreciate too, would also be Boltony, which I'll show in a moment what watches I have from them. But this watch is domed mineral crystal. Mineral isn't great. I would have actually preferred domed acrylic crystal at this price point, but the domed mineral crystal is at least quite nice. It is a salmon dial. I don't have any salmon dials in my collection, which is the reason why I've kept hold of this. And you've got sort of like a blue syringe hands. I did comment during my first review that the hands were a little too small for the dial. They weren't off-putting, it was just something that you noticed after a while and niggled on you a little bit. I have since then seen a few comments on my review in particular, and on a couple of other reviews on YouTube, to say that they have actually fixed the hands now as well, so they are extending a little longer. But this is a great watch from Mercure and Perry Pollen, and I would also say that if you are an AliExpress, the Mercure group and the Mercure watches are definitely ones to have a look at. I think they do offer something unique, and they do offer some good value for money as well. Moving on to the Mercure group, I'm actually going to go to the Addys Dive group on AliExpress, and I'm going to show what I feel is one of the best value watches that you can buy in the world today, period. So I think it's actually 2 watches, the Captain Willard 1970, which I did have in my collection and I sold, but the one that I've kept within my collection is their Pilot's Watch Homage, a 200-meter sort of style pilot's watch, which is powered by the NH35, anti-reflective AR coating sapphire crystal, heaps of lume. The lume on this watch is insane. I have known diving watches and divers watches that cost £400 or £500 or even more that don't have the amount of lume that this watch does. The leather strap is actually quite comfortable, it's quite solid, but you can get it on a NATO and an engineer style bracelet. But I'm really happy with this watch, and I did have this watch once before and sold it. I don't think this watch is going anywhere. For £60 it's worth out of anyone's money, so I think I'm pretty sure that this watch is going to be staying in my collection for this year. I've actually realised there are 5 watches within the AliExpress collection, which actually brings my total up from 25 watches to 26 watches. This watch was actually in a drawer, and I'd completely forgotten about it until I opened the drawer up just now, taking the rest of the watches out. This is the Loriot, and I've still got it in my collection. I have modded it a little bit since I first bought it. I've got rid of the bracelet, and I've removed the black aluminium bezel, and put a green aluminium bezel to give it more of a Kermit look. But I'm not quite happy with it. I might mess around with it a little more. Again, this watch is, I think it's around £50, $50 on AliExpress. I'll leave a link to it below. But I haven't posted a review of this watch because I've been having too much fun messing around with it, if I'm honest with you. And there are other things that I want to do with this watch potentially in the new year. I just haven't quite decided. I might change the bezel again, maybe put a matte black one on instead, or maybe put a ceramic bezel on there. I might change the sapphire crystal. I'm not sure. There's a couple of things that I could do with this watch that I could do in the new year. So I'm keeping this watch in a drawer in the back burner, but it is still part of the collection, I guess, so it's worth a mention today. Next on the list, we have a watch brand that is without a doubt my favourite AliExpress brand of 2022. I've owned a few of their watches already. I had one sent to me for free, which was a trench watch, which I have sold on. And I also started off collecting theirs with the Bolton Dirty Dozen, which I've actually sold on again to fund the purchase of new watches. But I think this watch within my collection is probably going to be a bit of a keeper. It is a chronograph. It is Bolton's chronograph powered by a Mecha Quartz movement. I think Mecha Quartz is a fantastic movement to have within a watch itself. It keeps the accuracy, but with the look of a automatic watch. And I had a toss-up. So they've got the brushed steel or bead blasted steel style military chronograph, and they also have more of a classier tuxedo style Patek Philippe vibed sort of chronograph watch that they've got on the other side of it. And I decided to go with that one instead. It has a high polished case, which I think is really nice. Sterile case back. I'm absolutely fine with that. I don't really need to have anything interesting on the case back for this watch. The dial itself is black and blue. It's sort of a blacky blue colour, and it's quite simply put Bolton and chronograph underneath. You've got two sub dials. You've got a minute tracker to the left hand side and a 24-hour indicator on the right, and then you've got 12. You've got sort of Arabic all the way through, which is sort of like a faux patina, and it's got great lume on this watch as well. But the last watch within this AliExpress sort of roundup is probably my favourite AliExpress pickup of 2022. It is the San Martin homage to the Tudor Black Bay GMT, which in itself is an homage to the GMT Explorer from Rolex. This watch is powered by the NH34. I think this is a fantastic movement and a bit of a game changer. It is a caller's GMT, not a traveller's GMT. The lume on this watch is fantastic. Again, just like with the Bolton, you've got a lovely piece of domed sapphire crystal, double domed sapphire crystal. This one has a date complication at the 3 o'clock to keep it in line with the homage. The lume on this watch is pretty good as well. Screw down crown, 100 meters of water resistance. I have no doubt in my mind that it could probably do more. The bracelet for this watch is actually really nice as well. It has female end links, and then it's screw links and a really nice sort of milled clasp. And what I would say is real props to San Martin for getting their branding right after all this time and having, you know, continuous branding, which I think is pretty good. And then also for the fact that they've not tried to do anything fancy with the bracelet. The bracelet is just a nice solid screw link bracelet with a really nice milled clasp and then 4 holes of micro adjust. That's all we really need. So Pagani Design, take note, because the extensions that you put on some of these divers watches, you just don't need them. A watch as solid as this just doesn't need it. I've been wearing this watch quite a bit since I bought it. It's actually been one of my favourite watches within my collection, and I do love Tudor watches. I have a Tudor Black Bay myself, and I think this homage is actually pretty good. So now we are heading into the final 9 watches within my collection, and all of these watches have had an equal amount of love. In fact, actually that's not quite correct. I love all of these watches, but some of them have had a little more love than others, but they're all key parts of my collection, and I think these watches are the ones that I'm probably not going to want to let go of at all within my collection. So first of all, we have is my Smiths watch, and this is a Smiths that I featured in a review and I featured on my Instagram page. This is without a doubt my favorite dress watch. This is probably going to be the watch that I wear with a tuxedo or black tie event, the Smiths Empire watch. It's a very simple watch. It's very classy. My wife bought this watch for me. Again, it's got a nice domed acrylic crystal over top of this watch. It was new old stock. It has sort of like a gold style paint over the stainless steel, and it's a very simple small dial watch. I put it on this black leather style NATO strap, but I think it's still quite classy. And yeah, this watch is just fantastic. It is just a watch that I keep coming back to and wanting to wear. Just like with the Timex Marlin that I've mentioned before, I've not had an opportunity really to wear this watch as much this year, but whenever I have, even though I've just been walking around the house wearing it, I've just loved this watch. It's one of those watches that you can just look down on and smile at every single time, and you know, because of it being a vintage watch and because it being a Smith's Empire watch, yes, it may not be the most expensive watch out there, but it is unique, and there won't be a lot of people with a watch like this one. Now, the next watch on my list is a brand new watch. I have bought this, I've not reviewed it yet, and I've purposefully kept it towards the end of this review because if my wife watches it, then she is going to know one of the presents I bought for her for Christmas. So this is a Katina Tank watch, and you can see there's a lot of similarities between that and a Cartier. So this watch is actually 1970s new old stock, and I've bought a matching pair. There's one for me and there's one for my wife as well. Now this one has an interesting story behind it. I've changed the bracelet to a black leather bracelet. The bracelet that came with this one was just disintegrating after, you know, 50 odd years of not being worn properly. But this watch is really interesting. A lovely piece of acrylic crystal over the top of it. It's a manual wound ETA movement as well. But these watches, they jumped on the hype train in the 70s and the 60s and 70s when it came to the Katina, when it came to the Cartier Tank, and they created their own version of a tank watch. Now, funnily enough, this is where some of the first, I guess, counterfeit style Cartier watches came from. So Katina would sort of make these watches and sell them on bulk. They would sell them for a little cheaper than the Cartier watches, and when people bought these watches, what some of them would do is actually take the dial out of the Katina watch and replace it with a Cartier logo instead. And that's quite interesting because the movement is the same. The movement is a manual wound ETA movement, which I believe is what Cartier were using at the time. The case is the same, and the bracelet itself, or the bracelet or the leather band, was the same as well. So for all intents and purposes, this watch was almost Cartier, just without the name to it. But I saw this watch new old stock, and I managed to get two, one for myself, one for my wife. This is a fantastic pickup. I'll be wearing this one and having it for review in 2023. Just keep a hold of this space, keep an eye on this space, and yeah, this watch is quite interesting, and it might revitalize my love for you know, sort of tank watches as well, or that sort of rectangular style watches too. Now, you'll be glad to know that is the last of my vintage watch pieces. Now we are through to my final 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 watches, and all of these watches are modern watches, and they all have their own unique twists. So first of all, I have the Mido Ocean Star, a watch that I took with me to Greece on my holidays. I wanted a nice dive watch, but I didn't want to take my Tudor Black Bay in case it was damaged or I lost that watch, and I'm glad that I took this watch with me. It's seen some pain and some struggle. You can see there's some marks on the bezel, for example, from where I've been wearing it and where I've sort of worn it and beaten it hard. This is a automatic caliber 80, which is the ETA 80 movement. Obviously Mido are part of the Swatch group. This one is the two-tone sort of rose gold and sort of silver stainless steel bracelet. It is a matte black dial, plenty of AR coating on this watch. I once called Mido the best Swiss diver that you've never heard of, and this is sort of, I would class this watch as being quasi luxury. I'd probably class it in the same sort of area as maybe Satina or maybe even Longines in terms of their market reach, but they are well known within some of the Latin American countries over some of the Western countries. But this watch, Mido, it's really nice. It has a colour match date wheel, day date wheel. The bezel is a little fiddly, but otherwise I think this watch is a really, really nice watch, and it's staying in my collection. It is going nowhere in 2023. Next on the list we have my final digital watch, my final Casio, and the first GShock that I have ever owned is the GShock DW5610. I bought this one on the grey style resin case with the black negative with a black sort of dial and the negative display. I love this watch. I think it's a design classic, and I think this is a bit of a departure from the design classic. It's a design classic with a modern twist. Quick release. I'm not sure why they've got quick release with this one, because it's all integrated. However, this watch does a lot of things for me, and to be honest with you, I could get rid of all of the other Casios within my collection and just be happy with this G-Shock. It's not solar powered, it's not multi-band 6, it is just a standard, bog standard G-Shock, but it is really good. I took this watch with me to Greece, to Corfu this year. I've taken this watch swimming, 200 meters of water resistance, and it still looks pretty much brand new. It looks like I haven't really sort of beaten this watch as hard as I probably have done, but this watch will be in my collection, I think, for many years to come. I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful digital watch, and I can't recommend this style of G-Shock more to anyone else. I have been tempted by the Casio, but every time I look at this watch, I think that I don't need the Casio, because I've got the DW5610, which is just a classic class watch. Classic. Wow, so this is the only Seiko that I've got in my collection. I did have the Seiko SRPE, which was one of the watches I took with me to Corfu on holiday. But when I got back, I had to think about things, and I wanted to get a couple of other watches that would do the job that the SRPE did, and I decided to keep this one. So this one is the Seiko Sari 057. I think this is a lovely looking watch. It is a slightly bigger version of the Seiko Saab 033. It is still legible, and it wears really well on wrist. It just doesn't have any loom, so it's a little more sort of, I guess, classy, even though it is a sports watch. Still got 100 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal over the top of this dial, and on my original review I described this as a baby Grand Seiko, and I sort of still agree with that. You know, it's a pin and collar system, which is a little bit annoying, but it didn't take me too long to measure and to alter, but the only thing with this watch was that it had a press clasp, and I've swapped it over now for an aftermarket milled clasp as well. But this watch is I don't think it's going anywhere. You know, every time I think I could sell this watch, I think that I would regret it. It's just a classy looking, really nice Seiko. There's not much else I can say about it, really. Now we are into the final four watches, the watches that I feel most define my journey as a collector, and the 3 or 4 styles of watches that I particularly gravitate towards, and these are the most important watches within my collection for those reasons. What I will say before I begin on this one is I'm going to go through a very small list of watches that I've gotten rid of, that I don't regret getting rid of, but I feel as if they were big things to let go of. The first one was the Seiko SRPE, which I had at the beginning of this year, and I took with me to Greece. Just couldn't justify it in my collection anymore, and ended up sort of selling that one on. The next one was an AliExpress watch, which was the Boltons Dirty Dozen. I absolutely loved the Boltons Dirty Dozen. I thought it was a fantastic watch, but yet again, I had other watches that did similar jobs to it, and I just didn't wear it that often. I thought it needed to go to a home where someone would potentially look after it, you know, and love it as much as I did. And the final watch on the list that I've got rid of was one that I posted a video about a few weeks back, and it is the Orient Triton. Now, I and ahhed, this was an incredibly difficult decision to make for me, because the Orient Triton was hands down one of my favorite watches. It is the watch that I first bought myself, which reignited my love for watches after I was gifted the Casio for Christmas 5 years ago. A couple of years later, I bought this Orient to really sort of cement myself within that. But at the end of the day, I loved that watch so much, but I just wasn't wearing it. You know, when I was in Corfu, I wore it a few times. I wore it when I was in the sea, but I also wore the Mido Ocean Star as well, which I preferred the look of and feel of on my wrist. And then I also bought the Tudor Black Bay as well, which is another dive watch, and I couldn't really justify having 3, and if you count the Loriot within my collection, having 4 diver watches in my collection that I just potentially wouldn't use. And this watch had a lot of was very important to me, but at the same point it wasn't the most important watch within my collection. And for me, it was more important that that watch would go to somebody who would wear it as much as I wore it in the early days and would really enjoy that watch and make some great memories with it. So far, I don't regret selling it, but, you know, give it a few months, I might regret selling it. But at the moment, I don't regret selling it, and I'm fully behind that decision. Now, with that in mind, let's get on and have a look at the final 4 watches within my collection. Now, the first watch within the final 4 is actually the newest watch within my collection entirely, and this is the Tissot PRX, the Automatic Powermatic 80. Version of this watch. Again, it is powered just like with the Mido Ocean Star. It is powered by the ETA 80-hour power reserve. Fantastic watch. The Tissot PRX is just a fantastic watch series. I was umming and ahhing between getting this automatic version with the guilloche style dial and the sort of like the gold bezel and white dial. I was debating whether to get this one or to get the white linen dial that was quartz movement, and at the end of the day, I saw this one brand new on eBay secondhand, and they were selling this watch for just a little bit more, I think about 50 or 60 pounds more than the quartz piece, and so I jumped on it, bought this one immediately, and I absolutely don't regret it. I think this is a fantastic looking watch. I think Tissot PRX is one of the most hyped watches in the last 4 or 5 years, but I also think it's justifiably so. Unlike the Omega Moon Swatch, which I featured in the collection earlier, I think this watch actually really does justify the price tag, how much you pay for it, and it justifies the hype. I think this is a really well made watch. I think it's just gorgeous. I love the integrated bracelet. I love the 80s 70s feel of it, and I love the fact that this comes from Tissot, a really well known watchmaker within the industry and part of a massive conglomerate which is the Swatch Group. The next watch on this list is the last one of the Swatch Group. This is my Hamilton. It is the Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic. Again, it is powered by the ETA automatic or Powermatic or Caliber 80 or whatever it is you want to call it, the one with the 80-hour power reserve. This watch is absolutely fantastic for me. When I first got this watch, I called it an Explorer on a budget. I still stand by that. This watch is a field watch. It is 38 or 42 millimeter. I've got the 38 millimeter with a 20 mil lug width. It is an automatic ETA movement with the 20-hour with the 80-hour power reserve. You've got 100 meters of water resistance. A lovely piece of sapphire crystal over the top of this watch, and the look of it is just really simple, really straight down the line. It is a perfect everyday watch for me. This is probably my most worn watch of 2023. It's tied between this watch and the next one on the list in terms of my most worn watch of 2023. Took this watch to Greece with me as well, wore it when I wasn't swimming or wasn't in the sea. I've worn this watch constantly throughout the year. It is one of my favorite pickups, and it's probably not one that I would want to let go of unless somebody was to slap an incredible price for a Rolex Explorer, and even then I'd probably debate whether to keep this watch anyway, just because of how damn good it is. If I could recommend you to get any watch in 2023, it would be to have a look at Hamilton's back catalogue and have a look at some of the Hamilton watches that are available, and I would still say to have a look at the Khaki Field Automatic. It is a fantastic watch. The next watch on this list that could easily be within a shout of being my most worn watch of 2023 is the Bulova Lunar Pilot. My wife bought me this watch for Christmas last year. I've been wearing it pretty consistently since then. It tends to be the watch that I gravitate to a lot when I'm around the house because it's got that sort of casual feel to it. It is a verified moon watch as well. As we know, we all know the story about this watch and where it sort of comes from. Bead blasted, top hat sapphire crystal, a quartz movement which is sort of in a league of its own, really. Plus or minus 10 seconds per year it's accurate to. That's absolutely insane. I have in recent years, in recent months, been looking at Speedmasters, Omega Speedmasters, but every time I look at this watch, every time I put this watch on, I just think to myself, you know, I've got the wrist size for it, I can wear this watch pretty well. I just don't see the need in getting an Omega Speedmaster when I've got this watch. This was something that my wife bought for me. It's very special to me. This is one of my top 4 watches and will be staying in my collection for the long term. Absolutely. The last watch on this list, and my ultimate watch within my collection, is my Tudor Black Bay. I've got the 41mm heritage version. Yes, I could have got the 58, the 39mm, but I still like this watch. I think it wears perfectly on the wrist for a dive watch. I love the look and design of this watch. I prefer this watch to a Rolex Submariner. I don't own one in my collection, but I have worn them in the past and I have tried them on, and I still prefer the Tudor. I think this watch is absolutely fantastic. My one moan and niggle with this watch is the bracelet. It isn't the actual rivets on the bracelet itself, it's just the clasp. It doesn't have that much in terms of micro adjust, and they don't have any half links either, so that is a bit of a negative. But this watch is an absolute strap monster. I've worn this watch on the original bracelet. I bought an Uncle Seiko bracelet for it as well. I've had it on a mesh strap. I've also been wearing it on various NATOs as well. This watch was picked up towards the, I think I've had it now for just over a year or so. I've actually done another video on it which will be coming out over the holiday period, but this watch just offers so much, and it is the ultimate watch in my collection. It was one of my grail watches, and I'm really happy to have been able to afford to get this watch as well. So the Tudor Black Bay is one of, no, it's my favourite watch within my collection. It's not my most worn watch within my collection, and that's just because of wanting some Garda watches and just sticking the Hamilton on or the Bulova watch on quite a bit in the last year. But the Tudor Black Bay is still the one that I wouldn't let go of out of every single other watch on this list. If I had to sell all of my watches, I would sell them all and I would keep the Tudor Black Bay as just being the watch for me. Oof. So that's my list. What do you guys think of my collection? I think it is okay. I think it's a fair collection. There's a lot more that I think I need to look at to complete for next year. I actually want to scale down my collection in 2023, so I might sell off a few pieces and then buy some standalone pieces that come in. I still need a good GMT. Yes, I've got the NH34 powered San Martin watch, but I do sort of pine for one with an original design as well, so I'm not sure what I would get. I'm going to have a look and see. I did do a roundup video of that one, and I've also got a bit of a hankering for either a mechanical or an automatic chronograph watch as well. And again, that one just depends on design and what's available. There's a couple of different brands that I've been looking at, both micro and you know, sort of mainstream brands, but I think those two are going to be the ones that I add to my collection for next year. And I'm not sure, I'm not so bothered about brands. It's more about the style of the watch, how it looks, how it wears on wrist, and the longevity of it. So that is my thought process there. But you know, I could change my mind throughout the year. I could find other watches that I prefer. But guys, what do you think of my collection? Do you think it's a good collection? Do you think it's a bad collection? Do you think I've missed anything out? Do you think that my collection is just rubbish? Leave me all of your hatred in the comments below. It will fuel me for 2023, and also leave me a love as well. That's also nice as well, I suppose. But guys, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this video. You can follow me on Instagram, links are below. I've still got the shops that I have open. I've got my eBay store and I've got my Amazon storefront as well, which you guys can have a look at. Have a great Christmas period. Enjoy your new year. Make sure you're safe, happy and stay blessed. And don't forget guys to like and share and subscribe to anyone else who has posted state of the collection videos for this year, because take it from me, it is a absolute nightmare to film. It is so worth it. I enjoy doing it, but it is a huge undertaking. So anyone else who posts these state of the collection videos, give them some love too. All right guys, you stay safe and I will see you all in a future video.